This is National Chess Master R. Rats at chess.com, continuing my video series on the correspondence team match played between my video lessons group and the team CARPE DIEM. This was played on board 66 of 210. Our man is karelkamelensprong playing against antigoon. And this was played on board 66, as I said. Mid-18 versus mid-1700 rating advantage for us. And let's have a look at what happened. Okay, we have the Ruy Lopez, and white opts to retreat. Now, black picks a sideline. It's completely playable, but and correspondence chess does give you a chance to explore some of these offshoots. But I think black has more reasonable options in the Ruy Lopez. One move was just played recently, Magnus Carlsen's game against Hikaru Nakamura in the Sinkfield Cup was G6, a move Yasser Sirwan was saying was popular by Smyslov. I'll take a look at that one at some point. But, A6 is the Morphy defense. It's the most popular. But black picks an offshoot line and now opts to get his bishop out. There's a lot of variations where black will develop this bishop on c5. Its normal position in the Ruy Lopez is e7, and we'll see why it would have been. I think it would be better placed there. This still actually follows book theory. I checked it out, and I got a little surprise here in a move or two. And they both develop. Now, guess what black plays? You guessed it, h6. Now, I'm not going to criticize this one because actually this is the most common move in this position, and it's one that's actually necessary. Why do you ask? Well, let's just go develop a piece. Okay. Now on Bishop g5, suddenly black has a little bit of a problem here. Okay, the problem being knight d5 is a threat, and black's going to end up with some double pawns. And this happens a lot of e4, e5 openings, like the four knights. If one side isn't careful, this can happen, and the game can end in a quick kingside attack for white or black if he's able to employ this. So this explains why I tipped my hat earlier and said, or tipped my hand earlier and said e7 is a better square for the bishop. Now you might say, what about this move? Well, white can just come back, and black has to step very, very carefully here. You never know when white can make a sacrifice here. See, knight takes, pawn takes, and bishop takes, and suddenly the black king is under some duress. Now, in this case, black can bring his bishop back to e7, but white's got some serious attacking chances here. Let's just explore some of them. White doesn't want to trade off too much. Okay, he doesn't have to play this, but I'm trying to illustrate a point here. White can probably get at least a draw. Let's see, king here, check. Now, if king g8, here comes this check. See, here's the weakness. This is pinned. Now, I guess black could come back. But that's not white's only line. I'm just kind of like exploring things. You always have to be careful about these. Sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. White could also play f4, which suddenly opens up a line for a rook. And really, you don't want to have to defend a position like this. They're just no fun. Now, correspondence game, yeah, you can stop and work out everything. It would definitely be something I would look at and want to spend a couple hours on if this opportunity arose. And what have I done? Spent a minute and a half on it? It's not enough time. So something to analyze when these opportunities come up, because you're learning how to play correspondence chess with me. So anyway, h6 is the move. And now white puts the bishop on e3, hoping for a trade so he can get the open H file. Black comes back, and white decides to wreck his pawn structure. And black decides he's going to go grab the bishop, and at the price of a pawn. I'm not sure if this was wise, because black gets thrown on the defensive for a while, and I'm not sure if white played it absolutely correctly, but you probably don't want to give up a pawn just so easily, just to get a bishop, because black is going to be scrambling here for a long time trying to get that pawn back. And here's how he tries it. First he takes the knight, then brings the queen out so that if the knight moves, the d5 pawn hangs. But this is just awful shaky chess. White's able to attack the queen, and black doesn't have enough pieces on the board to exploit the new weakness on e3 and the open diagonal against the white king. So white's doing fine here, and he's just going to maintain a healthy pawn up. But I think white misplayed his hand just slightly. We'll see how in a minute. Now black opts to take this, hoping that the advanced pawn becomes weak. But one of the drawbacks with that is that pawn just becomes a nuisance. How does black go out? How does black go after that pawn? If he uses this rook to go after it, a6 is going to fall. And so first black takes a step to move his pawn. That costs a tempo, and white gets a piece in play. Now white's ready to grab this pawn off the board. And black defends his pawn and attacks the pawn, but the queen is overworked. It can't do two tasks. It can't capture the pawn and defend on d6. So suddenly white finds a way to try to break open the black king. He shoves a pawn. Now he's ready to play f6 and mess up the black pawn structure around the king. So black's next move is kind of forced. Now g6 is a weak spot, although it never comes into play. But this diagonal against the king does, as we'll see in about a dozen moves or less. And so white just attacks a d5 pawn from a different square, and black piles up on it. And now black gets it back. But here I think white dropped the ball slightly. White started going after pawns again. I think it's more important to have a good position here. See, black's not going to be winning any of these pawns. A good, safe, solid move now is rook fe1. That just ties black up. Black is doomed to kind of a passive defense. He has to keep his battery here on the second rank to keep white out. And the d5 pawn still remains under pressure. The b6 pawn is still under pressure. And black really doesn't have much play here. So, the pawns, some people, they're in a hurry to grab pawns. They can win a pawn, they want the pawn now. Well, the pawn isn't going anywhere. That pawn is going to stay weak. Even if black stops and defends it, you could very well win that pawn in 10 moves from now or 20 moves from now, maybe even 40 moves from now. It doesn't matter. Maybe when you win it, you'll win it under more favorable circumstances. Because although white wins his pawn back, let's back this up. White wins his pawn back, black gets some active play. Now black is the one on the open e-file, and white can't oppose it. Okay, so black's got a little bit of compensation here, and now white attacks another pawn, and here I think black dropped the ball again slightly. He should bring his queen to b5. The point being, you're still guarding d5, and you might be getting ready to grab this pawn on b2, and suddenly black has some serious counterplay against the white king. And he doesn't. He puts his rook on c4, and white doesn't, he's defending this pawn. See, black's trying to hold on to pawns, white's trying to win them. They're a little too focused on winning pawns. And white goes for the pawn on d5, and black stops that, but he does so at the cost of weakening his position, because now white finds this great move check, and suddenly the black king's in a bit of hot water here. I'll show you what black does. We'll come back and look at it and see if he had anything else. Now the queen, this queen had been overworked for a while, covering some square n d5, and this hasn't changed. And white captures and wins this pawn on d5, and black opts to resign. Clearly, the only move is to put the queen here, and white just simply will grind out a win here. There's not much black can do. This king, let's see, we'll just show you. King comes up, and maybe white had better. Maybe I'm going too quick here. Okay, now I'm just doing this to keep the white king at bay. But all of a sudden comes a move like rook e1, and this rook is ready to penetrate into the black position somewhere. And well, black's just down 2 pawns and is going to lose this. Did white have any better? I mean, black chose to resign. Queen f7 can be played. Let's see. White could also check on a8. And let's see. If king moves, you can play rook takes a4. So black pretty much has to offer a queen trade again in order to maintain a defender on a4. I mean, this has got to be winning for white. Pretty much the same way. Now the black king is not as close as he was. See if that makes a difference. Maybe it doesn't. I guess the king's still getting where it wants to. But, this is winning for white. Okay, so what could black have done differently here instead of playing the rook? Let's see. Instead of bringing the rook back. Well, putting the king out on f7 just seems to be asking for it because the weakness on this diagonal check, and that black king's in serious danger. King must come here, and suddenly white's getting a lot of threats. How do you guard g7? The only way to guard g7 is to move the king, and the king only has one move. And let's see, it seems to me like white should be close to winning this game here. Let's see. Check with the rook. Now, if you bring the king back, you lose this pawn with check. If you bring the king back here, you get this rook check, which loses the queen. If you bring the rook back here, white will just pick up this pawn now, and black hasn't solved, his king weakness. So the only other square is to try to park the king on h7. Let's see. Now this could lead to some trouble. White's going to play here, and now there's this very serious mate threat. How does black cover that? He doesn't have time for rook e8, giving his king a flight square because white owns the e8 square. So, white was winning this in all variations. Anyway, I think they were both a little too pawn conscious here. Black was trying to, but black gave up a pawn freely. So, did he have to give up that pawn? Let's come back. Okay, here's where he played knight a5. When you're in doubt what to do, why not just develop a piece? Okay. Let's play d6. This helps get this bishop into play. Although you could argue that black could fee and Keter right now, right? Nothing wrong with that. But d6 frees this knight from. He can now move to a5 if that's what black wants to do. The only weakness in the black position is this pawn on b6. The f5 square is a little weak, but I don't think these are the two weaknesses in black's position that white needs in order to generate a win. I don't think they're clearly all that weak. Black should be fine here. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned. There'll be more videos soon. I have one more in the list to make a video for, and I'll get to that as soon as I can. Thank you.